5 things you need to know about the 1970s inflation crisis. It's a great article I read from marketplace.org. I'm not sure what, that's not Market Watch, but Marketplace. And Janet Wynn had written this back in 2018 September. This is a great article, 100%. It's very fun to read this. Anyway, so what happened during the 70s? Why was it so damaging? Well, we had turbulent inflation first and foremost. It was between 5 and 6% at the start of the 70s, but then went to only 3% in 72. But it began to go in double digits in 1974. How could that possibly be? How could inflation be in double digits in 1974 while they're raising interest rates? Weren't we going to whip inflation now with higher interest rates? Oh, but just magically the 20%. Hey, the 20% number of Paul Volcker is what killed it. It's just freaking dumb, man. I'll share with you why. Untying the dollar from gold. Yeah, big one here. Nixon spearheaded several economic policies that became known as the Nixon Shock, including the breakup of the Bretton Woods system, which fueled the high inflation of the 70s. And I'm going to read you this right here. So, right here. The price of gold had been fixed at $35 an ounce since the Roosevelt administration, but the growing U.S. balance of payments deficit meant that foreign governments were accumulating large amounts of dollars. In aggregate, a volume far exceeding the U.S. government stock of gold. So all these countries like, dude, we got $1 billion in cash, but you only got $100 million in gold. Something's got to give, all right? So that's kind of scary. These governments could show up at any time to the, quote, gold window, unquote, of the U.S. Treasury and insist on trading their dollars for gold, which could precipitate a run on gold and a complete collapse of the dollar. This was not a theoretical issue. In the 1971 August, the British ambassador turned up at the Treasury Department to request that $3 billion be converted into gold. So you think about it. If we got enough gold for Britain, but we don't have enough gold for Germany, what does everyone do? They're going to, just like the Great Depression, all the people lining up at the bank say, give me my gold, give me my gold, give me my gold. We don't have any. People say, I don't want any of your dollars, and your dollars are worth less. So Nixon then decided to get rid of the Bretton Woods, which meant the dollar had no backing, no more good as gold guarantee. That's not scary. What does that do? It makes the price of the dollar collapse, because what happens now is the demand is, people say, I don't want your stupid dollar as much as they did before, so demand drops. But what happens to supply? Oh, the government's still printing like drunken sailors, so the supply of dollars is going up each and every month. The demand of dollars is going down. Thus, the price of dollars goes down, which means it's inflationary. The cost of goods go up relative to the dollar. Pretty interesting, huh? All right. With inflation rising, the clamor to do something was mounting in both political circles and the press. And at the end of I'm not done. Hold on. And other than communism, probably the biggest economic idiocy that could ever be made was the wage and price controls. So Nixon administration introduced wage and price controls from 1971 and 1974. But this only slowed down prices while increasing food and energy shortages. Shocking. Of course, these wage and price controls end up failing, with ranchers deciding to stop shipping their cattle to the market. And consumers were emptying the shelves of supermarkets. So let's keep going here, because this is crazy. Nixon told his advisors that we have to go job boning. We don't want to have a wage and price control board, but resistance to an income policy weakened with each passing month. And the climax came in August 13th through 15th in 1971, when Nixon and 15 advisors went to the Camp David retreat. Out of this conclave came a new economic policy straight out of Stalin, man, which would temporarily, for 90 days, fix wages and prices to check inflation. That would solve the inflation employment dilemma for sure. Interesting dilemma. Do you remember dilemma with 2 M's? Or are you like me, remember dilemma with an M-N, D-I-L-E-M-N-A? Put it in the notes. What do you remember as dilemma? All right, let's see. The gold window was to be closed, and we were going to have wage and price controls. Arthur Burns, who's the, Secretary of the Treasury, Federal Reserve Board chair, argued vociferously against it, saying Pravda would write that this was a sign of the collapse of capitalism. But Burns was overruled. The gold window would be closed, and this would accentuate the need to fight inflation, for shutting the gold window would weaken the dollar against other currencies. Yep. Let's see here. Nixon worked on his speech, he was tormented himself, wondering what the headlines, this is just all political, they don't care, all these guys. Nixon acts boldly, or Nixon changes his mind. Having talked up until recently about the evils of price controls, I knew I'd open myself to a charge that I'd either betrayed my own principles or as nothing but a practical politician. Philosophically, I was against wage and price controls, even though I was convinced that the objective reality forced me to impose them. I had to do something. But it's a great hit. The public felt the government was doing something. Yep, the international speculators have been dealt a deadly blow. The George Soroses of the world betting against the dollar. During the next evening's newscast, 90% of the coverage was positive for Nixon. And the Dow went up 32 points, the largest one-day increase up to then. The Cost of Living Council took up the job of running the controls, and after the initial 90 days, the controls were gradually relaxed and the system seemed to be working. But unemployment wasn't declining. And so the administration launched a more expansionary policy, which is what they always do. Isn't that crazy? And then Nixon did more. Domestic wage and price pressures, a synchronized international economic boom, crop failures in the Soviet Union, and increases in the price of oil, even prior to the Arab oil embargo. What the hell? So Nixon had to reluctantly reimpose a price and wage freeze in 1973. Government officials were now in the business of setting prices. This time, it was apparent that the control system would not work. So remember, we had inflation which dropped in 1972 right here. We saw inflation drop below 3% in 1972 because the initial reaction to wage and price controls works. But wage and price controls can't work. It's not sustainable. Nixon took some comfort of a side benefit that George Shultz, at the time head of the OMB, Office of Management and Budget, said, "At least we now have convinced everyone of the rightness of our original position, that wage price controls are not the answer." Yep. Most of the system was finally abolished in 1974, 17 months after Nixon's beat George McGovern, smoked him. Did you know that not only were ranchers not shipping their cattle to market, but they were killing their chickens as well because of the wage and price controls? Of course, number 4, we got energy turmoil. Twin oil crises also pushed inflation to record highs. In October 73, the Arab members of the OPEC placed an embargo on the U.S. for supporting Israel. Oil prices reached as high as $73 a barrel, and that was in 2018 prices. That's not that big of a deal. Surging energy prices helped usher in a new era of American inflation. Energy prices, inflation. A second shock in 1979 led to the decrease in Iranian oil because of the Iranian Revolution. Yep. The average citizen who understood the energy crisis to mean a panic at the pump, the fear that we would not have enough oil to fill up our tanks, heat our homes, or run our factories. Of course, raising interest rates. To combat inflation, the Fed began raising interest rates in 1977. Really? Let's take this. From 1972 to 1973, the 30-day Treasury bills, and basically the Fed funds rate, it's not quite the same, but you can see it went from 3.8 to 6.9 to 8 to 5.8 to 5.1. You can see that they're raising rates well before 1977. Interesting. Let's see. But inflation continued to rise, prompting Volcker to continue to raise rates. So again, it's just like with MMR vaxes, man. The idea that measles, mumps, rubella was killed because of the vaxes, it just happened to be a coincidence but the vaccines did not stop. The amount of people affected with measles in particular was going way down well before the vaccine came in. There's reasons because better health and cleanliness. That's just a fact. It just happened to be that, oh my goodness, look at measles vaccine has killed it. No, it's going down well before that. That is not debatable, my friends. You can debate it, but you're wrong. I'm right. Anyway, so however, year-over-year inflation ended up dipping under 5% near the end of this period, even though unemployment was at 11%. Good stuff. Anyway, so again, Nixon right here. In retrospect, some would call the Nixon presidency the last liberal administration. It was not only because of the imposition of economic controls, it also carried to the great expansion of regulation to new areas. The EPA, affirmative action, OSHA, the EEOC. Probably more regulation was imposed on the economy during the Nixon administration than any other presidency since the New Deal. Yep. Let's see. Wage and price control system was not abolished, though. The price controls over oil and natural gas, owing in part to deep and dark suspicions that conspiracy monopoly powers in the energy sector they maintained for another several years. But Washington's effort to run the energy market was a lasting lesson in the perversities that can ensue when the government takes over the marketplace. There were at least 32 different prices of natural gas, which is a standard commodity, each of whose molecules is based on one atom of carbon and 4 of hydrogen. The oil price control system established several tiers of oil prices. The prices for domestic production were held down, in effect forcing domestic producers to subsidize imported oil. The whole enterprise was an elaborate and confusing system of price controls, entitlements, and allocations. It was estimated that just the standard reporting requirements for what became the Federal Energy Administration involved 200,000 respondents from the industry, committing an estimated 5 million man-hours annually. Anyway, so it all came back to the value of the dollar declining because of getting rid of the gold standard. Now, it turns out because of Carter and Reagan and their deregulation, the American economy kicked ass and took names going from the 1970s until 1980s. We were the only game in town. Japan looked like it was going to usurp us, but they did not. And so everyone was saying, America, love it or leave it, baby. So we were able to dodge that bullet of massive decline of the dollar because our economy just took off because of Reagan, Maggie Thatcher, and Britain. Now, Britain did okay, but America still kicks ass, take names because we're America, baby. All the immigration, all the trade agreements. No, look, we've rode that we've ridden that horse as much as it's going to get to us, but that is what happens. So people said, man, America is still kicking ass, which is why the dollar retained its value as a world currency, and that's just a fact. But you get rid of the gold standard, you have energy and price controls, you have massive regulations, and on top of that, increased interest rates. You're just dooming your economy, which is exactly what happened. Something to behold. We'll see if it continues on. All right, we'll see you.